Hello people, I'm Adiha Seher from CodersArts, and this video helps you understand the concept of access modifiers in Java. Let's get started. What is an access modifier? An access modifier is a tool that describes the limitations for a variable, method, or class. With the help of an access modifier, the compiler understands to what level a particular variable can be accessed. In simple terms, it sets the permission of access. So basically, access modifier is nothing but it sets certain limitations to variables, methods, or classes with respect to the access permissions. So to what level can this variable or method be used? We will understand more about it in detail as we proceed further. For now, you can just understand it this way. That's a tool that describes the access permissions of a variable, method, or a class. If you see, we have some examples for the same. Example 1, int a equals 10. Here, if you see, we have a variable a whose data type is int, and we haven't given any access modifier to this. So if you don't specify an access modifier, it jots down to be a default one. So this becomes a default access modifier. In the next example, we have public access modifier. So this is the place where you have to assign an access modifier prior to the data type. Okay, so if this becomes public, then it's available to all. The scope of this is high. We will discuss details of each type of the access modifier as we proceed further. And then here we have the private access modifier. If you see the first example, there was no access modifier described. Therefore, we assume it to be default ones. If you don't specify any access modifier, it becomes a default modifier. This is what describes in this stanza. If no access modifier is specified, then it jots down to be a default modifier. Now, if a variable is associated with a default modifier, then it can be accessed only across its package. And outside the package, the access of the variable is not possible. So here, if the access modifier is a default modifier, then you can access that particular variable only within the package. You can access it only across its package. And outside the package, the access of the variable is not possible. So this is how it sets the permissions with respect to access. So if this variable has a default access modifier, then you can use it only with its package, within its package. And outside the package, you cannot access this variable. If you try accessing it without outside the package, then it does throw compile it, time error. So this is how the permissions with respect to access are being set on variables, methods, or classes. So the gist is, using an access modifier, we can set some boundaries with respect to the access level of the variables, methods, and classes, constructors as per the need. So depending on the need, you can set certain restrictions in terms of its access on variable, methods, or classes with the help of the access modifiers. All right. Now let's understand the types of access modifiers. In Java, we've got 4 types of access modifiers: private, default, protected, and public. Private. The access level of a private modifier is only within the class. It cannot be accessed from outside the class. So if the access modifier is private, then the access is restricted only within the class. Outside the class, if you try to access this variable, method, or constructor, it does not give you the permission to access it outside the class. So here the access is restricted only within the class. Default, the access level of a default modifier is only within the package. As discussed in the previous slide, if any variable, method, or a class is default, then you can have its access only within its package, and outside the package, it's restricted. Then we have protected. The access level of a protected modifier is within the package and outside the package through child class. By child class, it means inheritance. If you do not make the child class, it cannot be accessed from outside the package. So you can access a protected variable, method, class, or constructor within the package. And if you also want to access a protected variable outside the class, you can achieve the same with the help of inheritance. So the outside class that you want to make use of, the protected variable, should be a child class. Only then you can access it. Then we have the last, public. The access level of a public modifier is everywhere. It can be accessed from within the class, outside the class, within the package, and outside the package. So public is the most widely used access modifier with high scope. So you can access it anywhere. So if the class is public, you can access it within the package, outside the package. So these are some of the types of the access modifiers. Let's take a deeper look. Let's try understanding it in deeper dimensions. Private access modifier. So as discussed, if the access modifier is private, then it is accessible only within the class. Now let's illustrate this with an example. So we have two classes here, class A and class simple. Now if you see, we have a private variable data and we have a private method message in class A. Now in class B, we have a main method. We are instantiating class A in this class simple, and we are trying to access the data with the help of this class A object. But you see, it throws a compile time error because it's private. So you cannot access the data variable outside the class A because the accessibility is only within the class. So if you try accessing it outside the class, you have a compile time error. The same goes with the next line here. We are trying to access this message method in class simple, but you cannot do it because the message method is private. And if it is private, outside the class A, you cannot access it. It's restricted within the class. Let's take a deeper look by taking an example and running in Eclipse and see how it works. So if you see, we have private access modifier here, where we have class A within the same package. Okay, we have class A, we have a private data variable, and we have a private method. Now, if you see in simple, we have this main method. We are trying to instantiate class A. And now what we do is we will try printing the data variable, but you cannot do it because it's a private variable which is declared in class A. And if the access modifier is private, meaning outside the class, you cannot access it. Same goes with method. So we're calling this method of class A, but you cannot do it. Why? Because the method here is private. If it is private, you can only use it within the class, and outside the class, its use is not possible. If I try running this code to see a deeper look, okay, it says error exists, but let's proceed. Look, it says the field a.data is not visible. You cannot use it, you cannot access it because it's private. Same goes with method message. The method message from type A is not visible. So if you declare any method or a variable private, you can use it within its class. Outside the class, you cannot make use of it. You cannot access it. Now, what's the use of private access variable? I think you can make use of it for the confidential data. So if you want your password to remain confidential, then you can make that variable as private so that nobody access it besides you. So if you know, you can access it. You're setting some restrictions to the other users so that you don't allow the other users to see your password. So in such cases, you can make use of the private access modifiers. If you want certain informations to remain confidential and not visible to the other classes, then you can go with private access modifier. Let's get back to the presentation and see the other types of access modifiers. All right, let's move on. The next type is default. So default access modifier. If you don't use any modifier, it is treated as default by default. The default modifier is accessible only within the package. It cannot be accessed from outside the package. It provides more accessibility than private, but it is more restrictive than protected in public. So of course, if you see, if you have a comparison between private and default, of course, default provides more accessibility because it's accessible across its own package, but private is only limited to a class. So if you compare default and private, default is more better than private in terms of accessibility. Let's try to understand the same with the example. So here we've got two packages, package pack and package my pack. And we have class A in package pack and we have class B in package my pack. Okay. And in class A, we've got a message method, which is default. If you see, there is no access modifier specified, which makes it a default access modifier. And then in class B, we are trying to create the object of class A. And then we are trying to access the method message. But you cannot do it because they're two different packages. And the default method can only be accessed within the package pack. So any class that is within this package pack can make use of this method. But if you see, my pack is a different package. It's not within this package. Therefore, you cannot access this message method as it is outside the package and the access modifier is default, which restricts the use of this method outside the package pack. Let's understand this again by switching to Eclipse and see how does it work and what error does it throw. If you see here, we've got default and we have two packages. One is my pack in which you've got a.java, which has a default method message. And then we have another package called pack in which you have b.java with the main method where you're creating the object of A and you're trying to access the message method of a.java, which is in a different package. And you cannot do it because they're two different packages and the message method is default. So you cannot use it in the other package. Let's just try to run it and see if it works. Look, it displays a message. The method message from type A is not visible. So you cannot use or access this message method because it's a default method and you're not using it. And the accessibility of a default access modifier is within its package. And you're trying to access it outside the package, which is not possible. And therefore, it throws the compile time error. Then let's proceed with the other types of access modifiers since we've covered private and default. The next one is going to be protected. The protected access modifier is accessible within the package and outside the package, but through inheritance only. So you can use it outside the package only via inheritance. The protected access modifier can be applied on the data member, method, and constructor. It can't be applied to the class. So this is one thing that you got to note, that you cannot apply this protected access modifier on classes. For the rest, you can do it. It provides more accessibility than default modifier. Of course, it does because it just allows the accessibility within the class and also outside the class, but on a condition that is you make use of inheritance. Let's take a closer look with an example. So again, here we've got two packages, pack, my pack. And in package pack, we have the class A with the protected method message. Now in class B, we are trying to instantiate class, Class B, in class B, you can make use of this protected method only through inheritance. Therefore, we are trying to extend class B with A. B becomes the child class and A becomes the parent class. Okay. Okay, so here we have this class B, which becomes a child class of class A. And since it is a child class of class A, it has an access to this method. So even outside the package, you can make use of this protected method only via inheritance. And since B is being inherited, you can make use of this method message. Therefore, it does not throw any compile time error. Let's just take a look through Eclipse. So if you see, you have the protected. So we have two packages, my pack and pack. In my pack, you have the main method, and in pack, you have this protected method, and you're trying to access it here. And since it's a child class of A, you can do it. And if you run this, it does not throw any error because you're doing it through inheritance, which is valid. See, it prints the message, hey. In case if you eliminate the concept of inheritance and try doing it without inheritance, just by making use of the object A, you won't be able to do it because the access is restricted. Let's see the run through. Okay, it says the method message from type A is not visible because the method is protected. You can use it within the package, but we are not in the same package. If the condition to use outside the package is through inheritance and we are not inheriting it, therefore it throws error. That's how it works. Let's see the last type of access modifier, which is public access modifier. The public access modifier is accessible everywhere. It has the widest scope among all the other modifiers. So here we have the packages pack and my pack, and we have two classes. So here we have a public method, and we are trying to access this public method outside the package, which is very much accessible because it's public. So public can be accessible across the program through any package from any corner. You can make use of public method, public class, and public constructor or a public variable. So this stands valid because you're trying to access a public method outside the package and it permits the access. So no compile time errors and it does go for a smooth execution. Let's see the execution through Eclipse of a public class. You can modify the same program. If you see A, instead of protected, let's make this public. Public, sorry. You go back to B, and this time see the error got eliminated and the error stands no more. So let's save it and run it. So you're trying to access the public method outside the package, and it works because it can be accessed across the program from any corner. So this brings us to the summary. Let's just recollect and conclude with a small table. So you have, here are the access modifiers and these are the boundaries. So private can be accessed within the class, yes. Can be accessed within the package, no. You cannot access it outside the class. Outside the package by subclass, no, you cannot do it because the access is only within the class. And again, outside the package, not possible. So if you go for default within the class, yes. Within the package, yes. But outside the package, even if it's a subclass, you cannot do it. And outside the package, it's not possible. So if you go back to protected within the class, yes. Within the package, yes. Outside the class by subclass only, yes. You can access it outside the package only through inheritance. And outside the class without inheritance, not possible. Public, you see it's accessible everywhere. So within the class, within the package, outside the package, and outside the package and outside the package, even if it's by subclass or a non-subclass, you can access it across. So this brings us to the end of the video. Thanks for watching the video. For more of such videos, please do like and subscribe to our channel, CodersArts. See you in the next video. Bye. Take care.